It's now 8 o'clock, so we can start this morning's talk, the second morning talk of this retreat. I hope you're settling in now. And as you're settling in, sometimes people think they should put more effort in, some say less effort in. Sometimes you don't realize that a lot of this meditation is in spite of you. There's nothing else to do. You sit quietly and as peace grows, the mind inclines towards the silence, towards the peace inside. And that's just a beautiful thing to notice. The more one strives, the more one gets into blockages, the more one relaxes, just the more that things disappear and these stages happen. I'm going to say more about that 1,000-petal lotus. I've got another 999 layers of petals to go. But it's just what I've seen over so many years teaching is that when I look at people who come here, you cannot tell which person gets into nice deep meditations. It's not always the people who've been meditating for years and years and years. And the example I love to give, on one of these meditation retreats, which I led here, I was here early, so I was just hanging out by the reception area, seeing if I can give people a hand. And this gentleman came, and he said he was on the retreat, but I took one look at him, and he was one of these guys he was wearing was what we call Australian national dress. You know what that is? Thongs, shorts, and a ragged t-shirt. And that was about all. And he had lots and lots of tattoos on him, lots of really curly hair, and he did not look like the person who usually comes on these retreats. And so I made the mistake, I don't mind admitting this, I judged him straight away. And I said, I think you've come to the wrong place, sir. Carnet Prison Farm is just up the road, if you want to visit some of your friends. And he said, no, I'm on this retreat. And he gave me his name. I checked, he was on the retreat. I thought, how on earth did he get on this retreat? You know how hard it is to get on these retreats. But he was on there. I'd never seen him before. And so the reason I tell this story is later on during the retreat, when we got to the interview times, then he sort of put his name down for the interview and he came and said hello. And then he started describing his meditation. And the meditation just got here. And he was describing a jhana, a real one. I couldn't believe it. The last person I ever thought would get a jhana on the retreat from scratch, and it was him. So many others of you have been meditating here for years and years and years. You'd always been helping out. Sometimes I see you, here you are again. And this guy, the first time after a few days, just got a jhana, a real one. And that kind of blew my mind. It was like telling me I shouldn't judge anybody. And that's even each one of you. After all these years of teaching, I don't know who's going to get the jhana this retreat. Which one is it going to be? But when I talk about that 1,000-petal lotus, it makes a lot of sense, because on the outermost petal, those outermost petals of the lotus can be all bruised and dirty and dusty, and they're like corrugated. They're not totally unpromising. We never know what's inside that lotus. So the job is to actually learn how to open up that lotus and see what's inside of you right now. And even some of the teachings of the Buddha, you see some of these most unlikely people. There's this one lady, she was absolutely crazy. She wandered into the Jetavana monastery when the Buddha was giving a talk, totally naked. Now, I'm not suggesting this is the method to get enlightened. Please don't do that. But that was this lady, many of you know her, Patachara. She'd lost her husband, her 2 children, and her mother and father in the same day. Different sort of accidents. And that would drive anybody crazy. And so she didn't know what she was doing, where she was. All her clothes had fallen off, and she was wandering in to the Jetavana monastery while the Buddha was giving a talk. Fortunately, no one stopped her. So if anybody... Well, I've got to be careful here. Because, it wasn't sort of some deep-seated craziness, it was just a temporary craziness. And people were going to try and get out of here. But the Buddha said, no, let her in. And one of the monks got a spare robe and put it around her. And then the Buddha started teaching her. And she became, one of my heroes in the Sangha in those days, Patachara. Because I had all these stories in the Therigatha of these bhikkhunis. They'd ordained for so many years. They weren't getting anywhere in their practice. And then they said this amazing teacher came and taught them, and they were enlightened within a few days. That was Patachara. She was one of the greatest teachers of that time. And you can understand why. She went through such a lot of suffering, but the Buddha taught her. And because the Buddha teaching her, she soon sort of broke through to enlightenment herself. That's how close it is. You just need that teacher to stop you doing the silly things you've been doing before and learn how to be still. Learn how to stop. Angulimala. Sometimes people say you have to have perfect precepts to become enlightened. Angulimala was a serial killer. Are there any serial killers here on this retreat? The 2 monks here, we had cereals today, so I suppose that counts as serial killers for breakfast. And what did the Buddha teach him? Stop. Angulimala shouted out at the Buddha, stop monk. Stupid request, because he's going to kill him. And the Buddha replied, I have stopped. You stop. And that was actually almost like a crazy teaching. Angulimala was rushing after him, and however fast he ran, he could never catch up with the Buddha. So he just said, stop monk, stop. And the Buddha said, I have stopped, you stopped. Have you stopped yet? Or are you still thinking and searching for something? Is there something you still want? Stop! That's one of the reasons why I've often said, because sometimes people complain, in the Western world, or even in places like Singapore, how many Buddhists are there in Singapore? How do you know? You can see churches with crosses on. You see some mosques, with the domes. What's the symbol of Buddhism in Singapore? If you go to Sri Lanka, Colombo, there's little Buddha statues all over the place. But for Buddhism, what's the symbol? On every street corner in Australia, there's a Buddhist symbol. The stop sign. Stop! Now, these are powerful teachings of meditation. Stop. And instead of going on to something else, going on to the next stage of meditation, going on to the next level of enlightenment, you stop. Instead of going on to the next thing, you go in to the next thing. That's how this happens. That's why that simile of the 1,000-petal lotus is one of my favorites. It tells you what to do and what happens. It's so incredibly simple. All you need to do is to be mindful and be kind. That's all. And see what happens. I already mentioned, on your body, you're mindful and kind, and then the body relaxes. It relaxes very deeply. So deeply, it's not a problem anymore. I think many of you have meditated here, and hopefully you've experienced your body start to disappear. That's what's supposed to happen. Because it's still, it's comfortable, it's not any business anymore. And if you want to know how much business this body usually is, sometimes when I sit here giving a talk, I just watch you. I just see you scratching your ear, moving your hands, moving your head up, smiling, just adjusting your shoulders. It's really hard to see people actually being still. You're always moving your hands up, your thumbs. Can you be perfectly still? Many years ago, one of the teachers, I'm scratching my nose, I can't keep my hands still. He was giving a talk, and we had a video of him giving a talk. And just for an experiment, just to see what would happen, we ran it fast, the fast forward. And when we ran it fast forward, you couldn't tell. This monk looked exactly the same. When he was giving a talk, his facial features, his hands were almost motionless, and that's how you could find out, by running it fast forward. The only way you can do that, to really be still, is in meditation. That is one of the reasons why I said yesterday, when the body becomes still in meditation, it's much more relaxing than if you're in a bath or you're resting on your bed. In meditation, you really are still. And that gives you a lot of peace in the body. Because it's peaceful in the body, everything is relaxed. It's a delightful feeling, which I always ask people, if you can notice that, that's amazing. You just sitting here, almost perfectly still, and the next thing which happens, your body vanishes. You go inside. I must mention, though, there's a few times, it's very rare I mention this, but somebody asked me about this a few days ago. Sometimes, when you're sitting still, sometimes the skin on your body becomes so alert. And some people say it's like there's ants crawling on your body. And there's nothing crawling on your body at all. All that is that your awareness of the physical sensations and your skin on the outside of the body becomes so amplified. That's kind of what it feels like. It's not unpleasant, but there's nothing dangerous there. You just enjoy it for a few moments, and then the body vanishes. It's a sign the body's about to go. So, if you have those sorts of feelings, just enjoy. And then the body soon vanishes. So what happens when the body vanishes? What happens next is you're going inside to the realm of the mind. And I didn't answer that question fully yesterday because it was just too big a question. The connection between when the Buddha said the mindfulness of the breath completes the four foundations of mindfulness. This is actually what you're doing here. When you start these meditations, you have a body, and now that body starts to vanish and disappear. When things vanish and disappear, you can get some understanding of what they really are. When the body's always there, it's like that old simile of asking a fish what water is like. And a fish can't understand water. born in the water, lived all their life in the water. How can a fish ever understand what water is? But can you really understand what your body is? When your body begins to disappear, now that's interesting. That's where you get insight from. But anyway, I'm going ahead of myself because, I have to be careful what I say. I'm getting ahead of my non-self. That's why if anybody asks me, can I take a selfie? I'll always say no. A wee-fee or a no-fee, there is no self. How can you take a selfie? Oh, come on, lighten up. So anyhow, so once that body disappears, in the guided meditations I teach, to get to the next stage, as you go in, the outer layer of petals has opened up. One of the next layer of petals which needs to be opened up is the petal of time. We are so much a prisoner of time as we are a prisoner of our body. And of course, you get people like Eckhart Tolle made a fortune on talking about the importance and the power of now. And that's straight in the Buddha's teachings, in the Bhaddekaratta Suttas, that they're to let go of the past, let go of the future, and be in this moment. That is, I always say that mindfulness, real mindfulness, is being in this moment and being silent. Otherwise you're distorting whatever you hear, see, smell, taste, touch, or know, if you give it a name. And if you're not in the present moment, you're not really seeing it. The past is always distorted, the future is distorted. And that's one of the reasons why yesterday you asked a really nice question. I said it before, but you asked for it to be emphasized. Why I was saying the importance of being kind to the future, being kind to the past. If you've got to let go of something, you have to soften it up first of all. And by being kind to the past and all those actors who made that past for you, you're kind to it. If someone hurts you, I ask people to please say, give them the benefit of the doubt. They were probably thinking they were doing the right thing. I don't know why they did that. They could have been drunk, they could have been on drugs, they could be totally out of their head. If you look at the past and all the people who performed acts which really hurt you, be their defense attorney, not their prosecutor. Defense attorney tries to find extenuating circumstances, trying to get them off the hook, trying to find some reason to forgive them. And it's the same for you. If you feel guilty about something you've done in the past, seeing if you too can be your defense attorney. We're usually prosecutors all the time. I shouldn't have done that, you stupid Ajahn Brahm. Why did you do that? You should know better. Just like a prosecutor in a court case. Be the defense attorney. Get yourself off the hook. Which means you can let the past go easy. And the same as the future. Don't always think of what can go wrong. Think of what can go right. Once, when I gave quite a few talks on this, again I invented a new word, and it was up in some sort of, it got popular enough to get for a year as a new word in some urban dictionary, and that was Hopi. And that was, don't worry, be Hopi. Because what is worry anyway? Worry is looking at the future with a negative mind, all the things which can go wrong. Hopi is looking all the things which might go right. Be Hopi. Don't worry. So anyway, that lasted for a year or two. I don't think it's in any dictionary anymore. But nevertheless, it was a nice try to get people to let go of the fear of the future. And then, the kindness is not just for the past and the future, Be kind to this present moment. You look at this moment like you look at for me, a little kitten or a cat or even a dog. There's so many cute animals around. And it's so easy, to have kindness to something like a cat. I've had many stories of cats. I kind of like cats. And we've got a new cat in our city centre now. And we've been trying, it's not our cat, it's a couple of blocks away. It comes there on the weekend, because it's a smart cat. If it comes to our monastery, a lot of Buddhists, we will never hurt it. And also, people fall in love with it. It gets so many pats, so many little laps it can sit on, and so much food. We've only recently found out what it really likes to eat, which is chicken. It's a cat. So that cat is going to get really fat after a little while. Years and years ago, we had another cat used to come into our city centre, and it'd always come on the weekend because it'd get petted and get fed and get really looked after. It was a wonderful place it could come to. And that particular cat, I would have come every Saturday, and so we got a telephone call. Its owner, which was just very close by, said, "I'm moving house today. Is my cat there?" "Yeah, it's always here on a Saturday." She said, "I have to come and collect it because I'm moving." And so she came in, to our city centre, and when she appeared at the doorway, the cat saw her. Honestly, it jumped right onto my lap. Sanctuary, sanctuary. It didn't want to go. We had another cat. We didn't know its name at the time, but found out its name was George. It just appeared at a monastery over the road on the beginning of our rains retreat. We didn't know where it was from, but we're not going to sort of mistreat a little cat. So it was very kind. It didn't seem to be chasing any birds or anything. So it was actually domesticated. It was nice and fluffy and very lovable. Obviously been domesticated. And so after a couple of days, the monks really liked it, including the head monk. So it stayed with us. And at the end of the rains retreat, when we start to get more busy, we had a little meeting, and we said, shall we adopt this cat? It was very easy to look after. So our meeting said, yes, we're going to adopt it. But we have to get it chipped over in Australia, find out, put a little microchip in there to make sure that, and also to get desexed. But anyway, when we took it to the vet said it's already got a chip in it. It's got an owner somewhere. And we found out its owner was in South Perth. We don't know how on earth it got all the way from South Perth to Serpentine all by itself. But so we had to give it back. Its name was George. And we gave it back, and the owner said, I haven't got a clue how it got all the way to Serpentine. But to me it was very obvious that cat just wanted to do a rains retreat with us. And it managed to get in and had a wonderful time. I don't get on to these cat stories anyway. So that kindness to little animals. And I was trying to talk about what awareness really is. When your body relaxes, and then you can come into this moment and be kind to the present moment. When you're kind to it, it stays with you. This is what I'm saying yesterday on one of the questions. Why does the mind wander off? Why can't you stay in this moment? You're in Jhana Grove now. Good food, nice beds, no stress, nothing to do. This is like paradise. Why would anyone want to think about, the place where you came from, your home, or work? Are you thinking about work? You're on holiday. Stop it. You want to think about what's going to happen when you go back, what's gone wrong, whatever. That's just not being kind to yourself. I always ask people this little test to see if you really understand kindness. Suppose after 9 days you go back home and you find your partner has left a note on the door saying, "I've fallen in love with my secretary and I've gone off to Broome for a nice holiday." How would you feel? Yeah. You've heard me tell these stories before. If you think, "Oh, I'm so happy, the person I love is even more happy than when they're with me." Isn't that what they say when you fall in love? Your happiness, my darling, is the most important. And if they're more happy with their secretary than they are with you, you should be so overjoyed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is that the case? Do you really know what happiness is and what kindness is, what love is? But anyway, at this moment, you love it so much, whatever it is, pleasant, unpleasant, it gets to be very nice after a few moments. If it's something which is irritating, you're learning something. A good example of that, many years ago when I was teaching over in Nolamara, and it was a very hot summer's day, and lots of flies were around. You know the sort of flies we have here during the summertime. And I was telling people what to do if when you're meditating a fly lands on you. The flies here, they don't hurt, they don't sting you, and they don't carry any sort of diseases. They're very clean flies, believe it or not. And sometimes when they land on you, they just like, exploring up your nose or in your mouth. Remember the first time I came to Jhana monastery, we had a little food, like a picnic outside. Whenever you ate, you had to eat like this. And close your mouth quickly, otherwise a fly would come in. So, and they would, they'd come in. And you're not supposed to eat live animals. And that's what the flies were. Anyway, we tried to reduce that as much as we possibly could. But nevertheless, with that kindness which I was teaching, I said, if a fly lands on you when you're meditating, you usually got your mouth closed, just leave it. See what happens. Now, I don't know about you, but if a fly landed on me, usually I wouldn't sort of swat it or flick it off. But this time, there was a camera on me. So I couldn't do that. So that's wonderful. So I was kind to that fly, which landed on me. Landed on the tip of my nose here. And this fly, you wouldn't believe this. This was in our Buddhist center. This was a Buddhist fly. And I'll tell you how I knew. Because it landed here and then it started walking around my mouth. And I got this amazing insight that when it got to this part of my mouth, just by the edge of my mouth, that was by far the most sensitive. Once it got past this, it was kind of easy to endure. But then it would go around again and get to the edge of the mouth, and that was really, really tickly. But it was only for a short moment, it would pass, and it went back to the top again. And then it did another circuit. It was hard to bear when it's around here, because I knew what it was going to be like. And then around and here again. And then it did a third circuit. And after the third circuit was complete, when it got to here, then it flew off. it did a circumambulation around my mouth. That's why I realized it was a Buddha's fly. It always kept its right side towards the center of worship, that's what we do when we do circumambulations. You see that in Sri Lanka, you see that in Thailand, people going around the stupas or the monasteries 3 times. And that's what this fly did to my mouth, the correct way around. It was a Buddhist. But, no, so keep on. The 1,000 petal lotus, Ajahn Brahm, 1,000 petal lotus, keep on. But the kindness, it makes it quite easy to enjoy these things. Not just endure, but enjoy. Add that extra sort of intonation there. And so, in this present moment, if you can really care for it, that's the most therapeutic and the most joyful. So that keeps you in this present moment. And sometimes you're not really concerned about the future or the past. Why you burden yourself with all the stuff in the past? Care for it first, give it kindness, and it becomes so light it's easy to let go of. And caring for the present moment means the present moment is a lovely place to hang out in. So you go into this layer of petals called time. The past and future petals disappear, and you're in this present moment. And straight away, just being and letting go of past and future, any anger, irritation, that's all comes from the past. Any wanting, fear, comes from the future. If you don't have a future, that kind of vanishes, disappears, you don't even conceptualize it anymore. It's very hard to have wanting or longing for anything. And be careful, even those of you who want to get jhana on this retreat, or at least get nimittas, or at least get something. Otherwise you'll ask for your money back. As I always tell you, you can always ask for your money back. Promise. You won't get it back. But you're allowed to ask. Sorry. So, in this present moment, you get to be free from many, many defilements, hindrances, causes of suffering. You're just here in this moment. Now, sometimes at first it's not pleasant being in this moment, but it's already here. You might as well give it some kindness. If it's unpleasant, you're learning something. I always mention that all of the teachers I never liked, the strict ones, I learned so much from them. Even unpleasant experiences, you learn a lot from. That's when I complained to Ajahn Chah about the mosquitoes. You know what he said? He said, call them Ajahn. They're your teachers from now on. Mosquitoes. Because they're unpleasant to endure. It's a very wonderful teaching. So after a while you respect every moment, unpleasant or unpleasant. You're not trying to get rid of it. If you're in this moment, you've got this beautiful layer of petals, and here they start to become beautiful and fragrant. The layer of petals called present moment. Then you've got to go a bit deeper. As that opens up, because of your awareness and kindness, that opens up and it gets into this even more beautiful state of silence. Many of you are silent, but you don't recognize it. That's what I said a day or two ago. Please, every time you are silent, don't say, wow, silence, it really is silence now. Then you messed it up again, you started talking to yourself. And you've all heard this, but it fits in here so beautifully. That Lao Tzu's teaching. Just going on a walk with one of his disciples in the evening, the rule was you had to be silent. And they saw this wonderful sunset, and one of his disciples said, "Wow, what a beautiful sunset." Lao Tzu turned around, went back to the vihara, this monastery, and never allowed the student to go on a walk with him ever again. Why are you so strict? What's wrong with saying what a beautiful sunset? I don't know if you get this teaching, but when I first read it, it just really struck me just how powerful this simile was. Lao Tzu said, when he said, "What a beautiful sunset," he was not watching the sunset anymore. He was watching the words. Well, if you can understand that, you understand why silence is so much more powerful, so much more revealing of insight. The words are not the insight. It's what they're trying to point to, is the insight. Do you really need to find all these names for a gorgeous sunset? Why can't we just watch it and enjoy it? So it's a silent, present moment awareness. That lotus is opening up quite deeply now. I haven't even mentioned the breath or any of these other stages. And the reason I haven't mentioned the breath yet is because I remember when I first read the Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha said that establish mindfulness as your priority. It's a parimukkhang. I know that some people translate those Pali words as to establish mindfulness in front of you. And that was a totally ridiculous translation. In front of who? Where? Where am I? If it's lunchtime, I'm probably down here somewhere. If I'm speaking, I'm here. If I'm looking at something, I'm here. Why do you always say, in front of where? Where are you supposed to put your mindfulness? The word in Pali is parimukkhang. It does not mean in front of you. It means put it in front. Give it priority. Make it really important when you start meditation. And that to me was so important because I saw so many people meditating and they went straight onto the breath and their mindfulness was not strong enough yet to be able to maintain the breath. They had willpower and they're going to watch the breath no matter what. And I was using willpower. And instead, I understood from how the Buddha taught, and also my own practice, that the breath will come to you when your mindfulness is strong enough. And I say this, and it's absolutely honestly true, I never go looking for my breath when I meditate. I make myself nice and peaceful, my body nice and still, establish mindfulness, in other words, present moment awareness and inner silence. And then I can be aware of the breath. You know why? Because it's the only thing moving. Okay, my heart is beating, but the breath is stronger. That was a simile of the sensory deprivation chamber. When I first came to Perth about 41 or 42 years ago, that someone contacted us and they said they just imported the first sensory deprivation chamber in Western Australia. Would you like to have a try? And Ajahn Brahm was senior to me, so he got to go in there. And I was supposed to go in the next day. But the morning after Ajahn Brahm went in there was a big advertisement in the West Australian newspaper. Sensory deprivation chamber, as used by Buddhist monks. They scammed us. Get one of the monks to go in there so they could advertise as used by Buddhist monks. I said, well, the damage has already been done. I asked, can't I go in? No. But I remember Ajahn Brahm telling me what was happening. You go in this little chamber, like a coffin, there's enough air in there somehow or other, and the water is at your room, at your body temperature, so you can't feel cold or hot or anything. And it's salty, you float in it. So there's no aches on your body, on your butt, on your knees or on your back, you're just floating perfectly at ease. And it's light proof, so there's no seeing. It's soundproof, you can't hear anything, so he thought. All those five senses are just cut off. But he said that as soon as you go in there, you can't feel anything. The water's at body temperature, you're just floating in it, and it's dark, and there's no sound from outside, but what you really hear is the sound of your breathing. I'm glad he told me that, because that made it very clear that why the breath is one of the core meditation objects in Buddhism, in meditation. Because when everything else calms down, you're not seeing anything, you're not paying attention to any external sounds, people are quiet, and your body starts to disappear, the sensations disappear, then that's all you hear. There's the only thing left moving, your breathing. And that's why you're going deep inside the lotus, and when you go past, the present moment awareness and silence, the next thing you become aware of is breath. You can't help it. It's moving, but because you're already pretty peaceful, the breath is usually very nice to watch. If you try and watch your breath, it's never as nice as when it's just everything else has disappeared and your breath is all that's left. And I remember that because the first time I went to Malaysia to teach meditation, people were complaining about something I'd never heard before in my life as a monk: samadhi headache. Meditation headache. I couldn't believe they were complaining about headache when they were meditating. If I have a headache, I meditated to get rid of the headache, not to create one. And then I found out what they were doing. They were trying so hard to watch their breath. And they're usually doing it at the tip of the nose. Many of you have seen me do this demonstration before. Take my glasses off, keep my eyes open. Now I'm going to watch the breath at the tip of my nose. You go cross-eyed. If you do that for 20 minutes, you're going to get a headache right across here. And that's what they were doing. So when you allow the breath to come to you, it doesn't actually come to the tip of the nose or the belly. It's just you are aware of your breathing. And it's much more pleasant. It comes to you. Everything else has disappeared. Things have faded away. So then you go into this layer of petals called the breath. Breathing in, breathing out, but it gets more full awareness than that. The first stage of breath meditation, this is like my breath, my finger. Breathing in, breathing out. I can see it go past from left to right and right to left. I've got to do it opposite to what I see because you're watching me from over there. To me it's right to left, but you see left to right. That's just when you first start watching breath meditation, going in, going out. And then later on, you see the whole of the breath from beginning to end, from end to beginning. That's the whole of the breath, sabakaya patisangvedi. And any teacher who says you're supposed to be aware of your physical body at that time, they haven't got a clue what meditation is. And I say that, and I can defend it to the max. This is what happens naturally. It's not what you do or you choose to do. As you start watching the breath and you're enjoying it, you see the whole of the breath. And there's no gaps. And then, of course, it becomes very peaceful. This happens naturally. You're not doing very much. You're not thinking. This breath is occupying every moment of your conscious awareness. And you're being kind to it. I did mention yesterday that All the ants which I've seen, never seen two ants exactly the same. I've never seen two breaths exactly the same. Even parts of a breath, every one is distinct. Every part of the breath is distinct. You really get to see this breath. Your awareness gets very, very refined. And it becomes fascinating. You've heard me say many stories. I think I said this on the first talk which I gave. Once your stillness starts to get strong and your mindfulness becomes very sharp, you can see every blade of grass on the lawns by the stupas. There's not two grades of grass which look the same. Your awareness starts to get strong. And it gets interesting and fascinating. Again, I promised you this, and hopefully it works, that when you come out of meditation, you've had a lovely meditation, and you look at the bamboo floorboards in front of you. There's not any two bamboo floorboards look the same. And you start to see their colors. They become gorgeous. It's not just seeing more, but what you see becomes more enjoyable. That's just the nature of this meditation. Everything you see, even the bricks, they become fascinating. You can appreciate more. And what that means when you're watching your breath, even an in-breath is gorgeous. And the gaps between the breath. That's why, this is where I quote Ajahn Brahm. He came here many years ago, stayed a while, and when we asked him to teach, he'd always teach exactly the same, very short sermon. But it was brilliant. He said, when you meditate, breathe in, sabha. And sabai means very beautiful, easy, gorgeous, lovely, beautiful. Breathe in, sabai. Breathe out, sabai. He's one of those first senior monks who would teach how to, when you do breathing meditation, to notice its joyfulness, its ease, its happiness, its inherent beauty. And that's what happens. If you go inside the lotus, the deeper you go in, the more gorgeous and beautiful are the colorings of those petals, and the more fragrant they are. When you start watching the breath, it becomes gorgeous. And again, I don't know how many of you have done this yet, but sometimes when you're watching this breathing, and you get to this stage of breathing meditation, you're sitting there, you really are legitimately enjoying yourself. You're not making this up. And then you know it's a time for lunch. You can't get up. Lunch? No, I can have lunch any day. This is just too beautiful what I'm experiencing. And you just carry on meditating. I don't know if that's happened here yet, but if you see anybody meditating here, and it's 11 o'clock your lunchtime, leave them alone. Don't tap them on the shoulder. Lunch. Let them enjoy the meditation. It's more important than lunch. Honestly. So here you're starting to get into the joyful meditations. Because it's joyful, does your mind wander away? No way. Do you have to put effort on to stay with this breath? Of course not. I know there's a lot of females here. There's usually more females than males on the retreat, but it's not that bad representation of males. When your husband is watching a football match and you tell them, time for dinner, do they ignore you? Actually, they don't ignore you. As many Sri Lankans say, they're watching a cricket match. Do they ignore you? They don't ignore you, they can't hear you. you're so into what's going on there, what's enjoyable, you can't even pay attention to anything else. And that's the same with this deep meditation. You're so enjoying the breath going in and going out, you can't get distracted. And what's going to happen next? That joy increases. There's this ordinary breath, the full awareness of the breath, the gorgeous breath, you're going into all these beautiful petals. You have your mindfulness and your kindness, that's pretty natural by this stage. And then you go into the layer of petals beyond the breath. Inside of it, it's the beauty, the joy which dominate. This is where you get into what we call the nimittas, these beautiful lights in the mind. That is how most people interpret this mind. You're going right into the mind. The body is now totally fading away. The five senses are about to just about vanish. And that becomes a powerful meditation. That's why many people come to my meditation retreats, because there's very few monks or nuns teach about nimittas, the precursors to the jhanas. These nimittas, these beautiful lights you see in the mind, are absolutely gorgeous. They're right inside, the breath which has just faded away, right inside, the body which has faded away. You're right inside this moment. You've just gone in, deeper and deeper and deeper in. And the reason why I say these things about nimittas is because even if you haven't heard them before, many people experience them. They don't know what the heck happened, what it was. And they're very, very beautiful and powerful and enjoyable. Many times, like, myself, sometimes in the early days I didn't have that many teachers, and you had these gorgeous lights inside the mind, and you sometimes thought, honestly, I don't think any human being can take so much ecstasy. You know the insight which comes up? You can always take more. More bliss, more happiness. There's no limit. I hope you get that sort of question comes up in your meditation. You're so blissing out. Is there a limit? Just go for it. Enjoy yourself to the max. And that happiness gets incredibly strong. And I'll just go quickly because I'm rushing over many important parts. When those nimittas come up, one of the signs which is a clear sign of... No, not actually. Okay, I'm going to say it. One of the signs which comes up is whatever color it is, it doesn't matter what color, what's really important is that light is so bright and beautiful. And it's a sort of color you can't see in this real world. If it's like white, the only way to describe it, it's more white than white. The purest white you've ever seen. A blue which is more deep than you've ever seen on any sort of pigment, on any painting or whatever. Like a yellow which is more yellow than yellow. It's hard to make descriptions of these states, but that's usually what people say. And so you're going into, it's not a color you're seeing, it's your mind you're seeing, and this is just the way you give it labels afterwards, not while you're in there, because it should be still. And eventually you just go inside those nimittas, and that becomes the jhanas. And just to finish off, something which I said on the last sutta class, which I gave, and I just got the quote out, let people see, how did the Buddha describe even like the experience of a first jhana? Not describing what's going on and what's happening, but how you feel. And he called it, just described it in many statements, the type of bliss you're experiencing. And one of the statements was, he called it Sambodhi Sukha. And because I'm a monk for many years and you know your Pali, that is like goosebumps. Because Sambodhi Sukha means like enlightenment bliss. This is what the Buddha said. It's not enlightenment, but you really do legitimately get a taste of Sambodhi, of enlightenment, even in this first jhana, what it's like. Are you interested? My goodness, you should be. So you go deep inside, and even this is a ways to go yet, but even there, whew, this is fantastic. So there's inside each one of you right now. You just need to peel those petals. How do you peel those petals and get inside? Don't do anything. Be still. Just have your mindfulness and kindness. Just those two. Nothing else. And then you just sit here with mindfulness and kindness, and these petals just all open up. And they shock you. You say, well, even me? Yes. You're a human being. Why not? Thank you for listening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Excellent. So now we have interviews. So 10 minutes each, not more than 10 minutes, because I've got a lot of interviews to do. And should be just about meditation, please. If it's about your family, you're wasting your time. I don't have a family. If it's about work, it's wasting your time. Actually, no, I do work. So see if you can keep it to meditation. That's the best. Okay? And for those of you who are meditating here, you can get some exercise, just go to the toilet if you need to, have a glass of water, and then get back on the cushion and just go inside. And don't do a thing. Just